Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be going over adjustable gas blocks for your AR-15, AR-10 style rifles. So this will apply to some piston guns, some not so much. So focused on the AR platform here because that is probably the most common rifle in America. So just a few things to go over, like from the jump, is that this is going to be somewhat science, somewhat my opinion, somewhat my experience. But basically for like a duty rifle, in 5.56, 300 blackout, like a small frame AR. If you can not run an adjustable gas block, I recommend doing that. So what I mean by that is when you add an adjustable gas block, you're just inviting Murphy to the party. And Murphy's Law, that is, likes to show up at the worst possible times, as you guys know. One of these, an adjustable gas block, even some of the ones that I recommend, is just another potential failure point in the system. So if you can get away with not running it on a duty rifle or a self-defense or personal defense rifle or pistol, I recommend that. So when would you want one or need one, right? So a lot of times if you're running suppressed, it will help the rifle run more smoothly, more reliably. It will reduce the wear and tear on the parts. That will also be the case if you have just a generally overgassed rifle, which we'll get to probably a little bit later on in the video as well. But it definitely makes the recoil impulse smoother and helps you shoot more accurately quicker, if that makes sense. So getting back on target is just easier because your muzzle's not jumping around as much. So there definitely are advantages to it. But again, it's another potential failure point. So you just have to accept that for what it is in your system if you choose to add it or not. So overall materials that I recommend is going to be steel. There's some titanium ones out there that I've seen so far that definitely look pretty good, and some other like Inconel ones that I've seen too, but those are sort of like off on the side of the market, sort of a unique boutique type stuff rather. But 4140 steel, any of the better steels, any of those are good. I would avoid aluminum as much as possible. The heat that's generated around the gas block on an AR style rifle is just, it's very, very hot and can quickly erode aluminum. It can erode steel as well, but the aluminum especially can erode very quickly. If you can get one that's nitrided, definitely recommend that. The nitride prevents corrosion. It makes the surface a little bit harder and prevents rather that erosion that we talked about just a second ago. Hopefully that plane next to me isn't too loud. But anyway, so those are the materials that I'd look for. Again, steel, nitrided or not, but 4140 or harder. So when you're actually picking one of these out, what do you want to look for? So we have some examples here. So this one here is probably like your most common type of adjustable gas block. It's going to have a little set screw here on the side and then one up front that allows you to push the screw into the actual hole where the gas travels up from out of the barrel gas port. So you're going to push this screw in and that reduces the amount of gas coming through the gas port. And then this piece on the side here is going to be a little locking screw to lock it into place. Now the problem with these is that they're very difficult to gauge when it starts to walk on you. So what I mean by that is that this screw up front that you're screwing in, with the rifle getting hot, with the vibration, with the heat transmission, with the gas actually pushing against this screw itself, it can and will eventually start to back out. Now there's some ways to mitigate that. Number one being, of course, Loctite, but at that point, then you kind of lose the adjustability aspect of it. So that is, again, probably the most common type of adjustable gas block, but in my opinion, it's also the least optimal type of adjustable gas block. So that is one we have here. And this one actually is what started this whole video. I've had two of these fail on me in the last probably 2 weeks. So that's really why this video came to be, because I was ranting to myself and I figured I'd rather rant on camera. So some of the ones that are a little bit better options out there, and there's going to be some that I don't get into just because I don't have them, guys, but I just want to point out the type and the reasons why I'm saying these are better. So this one here is from Sequence Precision. It's an adjustable gas block as well. One thing you can see here, of course, is that we have these little, let's see if my mic can pick it up, but these little detents every time we click the gas over. And a couple of things that are good about this system is that, number one, it's positive, it has the detent. You can actually see where you're at. It's a visible indicator. So for instance, if you're over here on the more closed setting for suppressed, you could just pop it over here, and if you knew that was your unsuppressed setting, leave it there and you would always know where it was. You could mark it on there, so that way you can mark your settings and know where it should be for each type of gas setting. But the key that makes this one a superior system over this one, in my opinion, is that this has those locking detents. So with the gas block, you're going to get carbon fouling, like I said, heat, all that stuff that's happening in there. This one here with the locking system there allows you to easily know, again, where you're at, and it won't walk on you, right? So if this one's walking out and kind of unthreading itself, if this one did it, it would be going like this. And you would be able to easily see that, right? Now, again, I do recommend if you're going to use these on a duty type of rifle, just mark it anyway, mark your settings where it needs to be. But that is one example there. And then the other one that I probably have more experience with than just about anyone there is this one here from Suppressed Armament Systems. Again, guys, there's going to be a ton of these out there that are probably going to meet the same criteria. It's just this is what I've used the most. Again, this one has a detent system, so hopefully my microphone's picking that up. Every time you click it, it lets you know when you go over one setting. Now this one actually has a bleed off feature, which is for another video. But again, it gives you the positive clicking so that way you know where you're at. Again, if you put a paint marker on there real quick, you would know exactly where you're at if it backed out on you, which any of these adjustable gas blocks with a detent in it, I've never had one move on me, not once. And I've fired thousands of rounds through these, particularly the Superlative Arms adjustable gas blocks, and never have had it move a single time, not even a little bit, not one click over. It's never happened. But if it did happen, it would be very easy to see as you just did basic preventative maintenance on your rifle. So those are two that I definitely recommend. And again, there's going to be others that are going to have the same type of system where it has some sort of locking detent. You can easily move it. If it gets carbon locked, you could, again, easily move it because of either a lever or a screw that's going to be able to overcome that carbon lock that can happen on the gas box. One thing I probably should have gone over in the beginning of the video that I didn't is basically, like I said, I think you are adding another potential failure point by using these over some of the other options out there. So what are the other options, particularly for like an AR-15? The easier options are going to be to add a heavyweight buffer. So like an H buffer if you have a carbine, an H2 if you have an H1, etc., and just kind of move up the scale there. Again, with the buffer, in my opinion, there's less potential failure points. However, you're still having more gas coming back into your system with an overgas gun. It's going to run dirtier than it would if you had an adjustable gas box. So sort of pros and cons there. But again, it's kind of like a less failure prone proposition in my opinion. There are some other types of options like the adjustable carriers for the bolt carrier groups. I've used one of those, the bootleg, and it's worked just fine. Again, though, it is another potential failure point, but it seems like a pretty good system. I understand that the Gemtech one's pretty good as well. I've never used it to date, but the bootleg has worked fine for me. Just kind of pointing that out there. But there's some things that you need to consider as well when you're running or just in general trying to tune your rifle, right? So there's some variables. Number one is going to be your ammo. Number two is going to be your gas port size. Number three is going to be how dirty or clean the gun is. Number four is going to be how lubricated or unlubricated the gun is. And number five, temperature, of course, always plays a role as well. So if you could tune your rifle so that way it was perfectly set, during deer season when it's 30 degrees outside, and then you take your rifle out a couple months later, it's 90-degree hot summer day, and you're going to have very different results, even using the same ammo. So there's a lot of variables to consider when tuning your rifle. And on that note, since I just brought that up, it reminded me, in general, the gun industry seems to have accepted the fact that an overgas gun is a more reliable gun. I don't want to say that that's true. But it's not untrue either, if that makes sense. So nowadays, a lot of barrel manufacturers are making their barrels so that they can run anything, and that includes like steel case, Russian ammo, like Tula or something like that. It's going to be underpowered, and like I just said, in varying conditions, so like in the cold or something like that, it will run that Tula in the winter and reliably cycle with it. The problem with that is that gas port size without an adjustable gas block or any of the other modifications to the system like we talked about is going to be overgas when you throw like some M855 in there on a hot day with a clean lubricated rifle. Just kind of is what it is. Now, some downsides to having a gun that's overgassed, like I said, premature wear, fouling of the rifle, and then also you can have unreliability due to an overgas system. You absolutely can. So there's some signs to look for, like pop primers, really fast operation, which you probably won't be able to see from the shooter's perspective, but you can feel it. You'll feel like a very violent action, either erratic ejection or ejection almost straight in front of you to the right with a right-handed gun. Those are going to be some signs of over pressure, over gassing there on your rifle, and that you might want to take a look at some of the solutions to fixing that. The downside, or rather on the opposite end of the spectrum, is going to be an undergas rifle, which with factory ARs these days, at least circa 2018, as of when I'm shooting this video, that's really, really not normal. It's abnormal to say the least. So you rarely see that. However, sometimes with guys who put rifles together, you'll see undergas guns because usually the symptom is that their gas box not correctly aligned. But what you'll see there is that the bolt carrier group won't fully cycle. And like on the last round of a magazine, for instance, won't lock the bolt open. Or you'll see just during the firing sequence, you'll see, round fire, case ejects, but it doesn't pick up the next round. And that's because it's not going through the full cycle of operation. And that's an undergas gun. So you need to increase the gas in that case. In that case, your adjustable gas box will not help you. But those are just some things to think about. I think I kind of covered most of the important things, guys. Again, if you're going to use one, I highly, highly recommend one that has a detent type of system, steel or a better type of metal. One thing I didn't mention that I'm sure folks are going to bring up is that in terms of mounting systems, so I tend to prefer either a pinned option or a dimpled option with a set screw like this. So you'll have some that will clamp underneath, and those are probably fine. I haven't run a lot of them, but again, the strongest system in my experience is pinning it to the barrel. Second to that is getting a good deep dimple here on your set screw and actually putting it down into the barrel so that way there's no way it can slide forward. I recommend using some red Loctite or thread locker there if you're going to do that as well. So pinned, then the dimple. But if not, you can clamp them on there. Those should be just fine. I definitely recommend using some thread locker though, regardless of which system you go with. So I think that should pretty much do it for my sort of rant video here. If you guys have any questions about adjustable gas box, by all means, post down below in the comment section. If you guys have experience with them, either positive or negative, post that down below as well. Love to hear your thoughts, and thanks for always as watching, guys. You can also post those questions over at my Facebook page. That's generally speaking the best way to get in touch with me, and I look forward to seeing all of you in the next video.